The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com.
This man is a very hard to get. Before he opened his DMs on Twitter after a post, because he put that he was now open to doing matches another little bit, so I decided to take my chance, and here we are. We got a podcast with Mr. Mark Haskins, one of the best in the UK, I would say. Thank you for joining me, man.
Thank you for having me.
It's a nice little story, that, isn't it? You put, that you're ready for bookings, and then, it opens a little dilemma for someone to jump in, and here we are.
And here we are, having a good old chin wag.
Yeah, I think that was like 2 months ago, or something crazy like that. But yeah, thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Like I mentioned before we went on, I'm such a big fan of yours. I've met you one or two times. When I went to 1PW, which, that's such a subject. I went there like last year, and I met you there. You was a standout there. I think for the short time that was back, I think you was a standout there.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. And it's a shame that things with 1PW ended the way that they did, because it was, oh man, just behind the scenes, like it didn't feel like it was just another small time independent promotion. Like it felt like it really had a chance to do some successful big things, and it's just a shame that it all fell apart.
Yeah, I mean, look at who you versed. You had a match against RVD, which he, as a person now, does only so many bookings. Because he's at that age of his career, he only does so many bookings, and the fact that you was against him, then you was against Rhino, and then whoever else you for the title, was it Ospreay?
Yeah, there was a four-way match with, I think it was Cara Noir, Will Ospreay, Lance Hoyt, and myself. And then I think that there might have been one other show after that, and then it all kind of came crashing down and hurt inside. Yeah.
So you was pretty much on the ECW killing spree, should we call it? You versed RVD and Rhino, and then there was rumoured for Kid Cash. Was there anything that was going to come about that?
I'd heard the same thing. I'd heard that it was rumoured that we were going to wrestle, but the show that it was supposed to happen on, it didn't get announced for, and that was pretty much it. Like, I didn't have any other information other than, hearing that was what the plan was. But the thing with wrestling is that the plans change a lot. There's been so many things I've been told across the years, which have been really exciting. I've been looking forward to, and then it just hasn't happened. And I guess that was just one of those things to add to the ever, growing list of things that could happen and don't.
Yeah. Was there any ever plans, like you mentioned, obviously, with you versus RVD, Rhino, was there any other people that you got told that you might be in the pipeline to verse?
No, not really. I mean, they had this idea that they wanted me to be like the extreme legend killer, like coming in and taking out the top guys of ECW. And there'd been a lot of names thrown around of former ECW talent. And I gotta say as well, man, that match with Rob Van Dam, that was a bucket list match for me. He was always somebody who I wanted to wrestle. And 2 days before that match, I ended up getting injured and I couldn't physically stand up. So with a lot of Red Bull and painkillers, I managed to get through the match with RVD. Because, I mean, it's not like you can just pull out of the show and then wrestle him a week or two later. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. So, I mean, it was great getting to be in there with him. Gutted that I didn't get to, go at the pace and, what it is I'm truly capable of, but still glad that I got the chance to throw down with him. And, apart from that, no, there had been, ideas, names pushed forward of, this is the route that's going to happen and what have you. But no, I mean, it's just one of those things where you kind of, as you find with wrestling, you have to take a lot of things with a pinch of salt, because you just don't know. You just don't know whether they're going to manifest or not.
Very true, man. So what I noticed about your Twitter, which is now known as X, I don't know why, but you do little match highlights and stuff like that, which is, I think, really awesome. And to think some of the people that you've been in the ring with, even in your time in Ring of Honor, or just even in the world, you've been, like you mentioned before we went on, congratulations on 18 years recently.
Thank you.
That's a milestone itself. But yeah, looking back at some of your favorite, who's been some of your favorite opponents? Whether that's been in Ring of Honor, the UK, or Defy.
Yeah, so some of my favorite opponents have been guys like Tommaso Ciampa. He was somebody who I learned a lot from being in the ring with. Just next level caliber talent. Him and Johnny Gargano, they're both incredible between the ropes. Pete Dunne is also somebody who I always enjoyed getting into the ring with. He had a very refreshing mindset in regards to wrestling and his approach to things. So it was always a good opportunity to get in there with him. And then, other guys who I love being in the ring with were guys like Sami Callihan, guys like Jay Briscoe. And I've managed to wrestle a lot of people who I grew up idolizing, like you mentioned the match highlights. I put one up of myself versus Rey Mysterio the other day.
I was there for that.
Oh, wow, really? Oh,
yeah,
awesome. So,
Rey
Mysterio. Yeah, that's the one. So, Rey Mysterio, man, like, he's a great guy in the sense of, he's what in his 40s or 50s now, and he's, right. So he's still attacking wrestling with as much passion, I think, as he ever has done, or at least from the experience I had with him. He was, getting in there, he enjoyed tearing it up. And it's guys like that I idolize, basically, of never letting that fire go out.
I mean, he's one of my favorites, and I've been very fortunate to meet him twice, so that's another good one. And obviously, you mentioned you've been in the rings with some amazing people, and there's going to be two people that I'm going to pop up now, and I think you have a lot of respect for, and obviously memories and stuff like that, is these two guys.
Yes.
Have you got any memories with Jay or Mark? Or, I mean, you've versed Jay, I think, in, I want to say, was it Scotland for Honor? Was it Honor?
No, so I wrestled Jay Briscoe in Crystal Palace in London.
That's it.
And that was real special for me because I traveled to a show at Crystal Palace when I was probably about 12, 13 years old, and watched Eddie Guerrero when he was over doing a UK run in 2001. And it was, so that venue was very important to me. And then getting to wrestle Jay there was, it was just one of those things where it felt like the planets aligned and, all the right things sort of happened. But no, the Briscoes, they're both awesome. I love spending time with them. I've spent a lot of time in doorways just smoking with Jay, and they were just both lovely, sincere guys, and just rugged guys that you wouldn't want to fuck with, but lovely at the same time. So they're both awesome.
It's the best way to be. So you signed with Ring of Honor, I would say, in, was it 2018?
My contract started, I think, January 1st, 2019. But we'd had a handful of shows throughout the year of 2018 and the lead up to that.
How did that come about, you getting signed by Ring of Honor?
It was the match with Jay. They'd seen me a few times on numerous tours that I'd done in the UK. And I think my first tour, I think, was in 2017. I wrestled Silas Young. Then they were interested. They wanted to bring me back. So I came, back for the next tour. And that was, I think there was only a couple of dates, but it was that tour that I wrestled Jay. And, it was the first show that Vic had accompanied me with. And when they saw us together, that was when it felt like they started to take me a lot more sort of seriously. It was where it felt like they started to have more of a vision with a future of us working together. So the next tour, we ended up, taking part in the International Cup tournament. And just looking at the guys in that tournament I wrestled, Jonathan Gresham on night 1, Flip Gordon and Hangman Adam Page on night 2, ended up going the distance and becoming the International Cup and only International Cup winner. And then wrestling Jay Lethal the next night at Bethnal Green, York Hall, for the Ring of Honor World Championship for about 30 minutes and just sweltering heat. And it was after that tour that basically they wanted to work together. They had this vision because towards the end of 2018, going into 2019, they knew that they were going to have a mass exodus of talent that were going to be leaving Ring of Honor and starting AEW, basically. So they wanted to bring in new guys, and that they were going to build Ring of Honor back up. And that was basically part of my job, was to come in and be a part of the new build.
So what would you say the biggest difference from Ring of Honor then to Ring of Honor now that you can see?
So initially I would say that I think one of the biggest differences is that back then it was more of a touring company, in the sense of it, they only had their own shows, right? Whereas from what I've seen recently, like a lot of Ring of Honor is pre-recorded, like tapings around other shows, basically. But I mean, it's like anything, man. Like everything's always changing, everything's always in flux. So it was just a shame that the Ring of Honor that I was a part of ended when it did, because it felt like we were starting to get some momentum. It felt like we were, working together really well. Like it felt like a family behind the scenes, and I'm just gutted that it ended the way that it did.
Yeah. And you also, if correct me if I'm wrong, you was at Madison Square Garden.
Yes, I was.
So that's a bucket list as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I believe that I might be the only man in history outside of a WWE contract to win matches at both Wembley SSE Arena and Madison Square Garden. Someone told me that, and I've just kind of taken it as a achievement.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
I don't, but
honestly, man, like we mentioned, you've been in the ring with countless names: Bully Ray, Alex Shelley, the Briscoes, Flip Goat, like everyone you've mentioned. You've been with Ospreay, you've Robbie X, you've been Michael Oku. There's just so many people that you've been in the ring with, and I think you've not even hit your peak yet, and you're still going strong. You are one, if not the best in the UK right now, personally, from my opinion. From just the way I see you move, you're quick, you're light on your feet, you play a really good heel, which I'm talking to you now, and you're a face. Is that right?
Depends what day you catch me on, man. Like, to be honest with you, I get to a lot of promotions now, and people don't even know whether like they want me heel or face or not. They're like, just go out there and be Haskins, and I'm like, okay, So I think that it's just kind of been one of these things where people just kind of leave it up to the crowd to decide, and sometimes people like me, sometimes they don't, but either way they make noise, and I guess that's the main thing, eh?
Yeah. What do you prefer to do, heel or face?
So both have pros and cons, well, I mean, obviously it's easier to be dislikable, especially if you're having a really stressful day. Being a heel is like a therapy session when you get to the ring. But being a babyface, you sell a lot more merchandise. So, you've got to see the pros and the cons in both of them, basically. Don't do too good of a job going heel, because that's when your merch sales dry up, and then that's when you don't make as much money. But it's no, man, like I love both, for me, it's I've always enjoyed wrestling for all the many different aspects of it. Do you know what I mean? I think I have some kind of, undiscovered ADHD or something, because I find repetition very boring a lot of the time. Like I need to find something challenging, find something different. So that's why I love wrestling for what it brings, because there's always something different, whether it's a difference in size of you and your opponent, whether it is, a heel face dynamic or whatever. Like there's so many moving parts to it. It keeps you on your toes, and it keeps things exciting and fresh.
Yeah. And I like that, because it's very, like you mentioned, it's different, and it keeps the dynamics, different about it. And it brings your thoughts coming up to a match different as well. So that's quite good. Obviously, like we mentioned, you've been in the business a very, very, very long time. Pretty much, we'll call it a senior. What's one advice that you... Sorry, what's one advice?
So I'm 36, but in the grand scheme of wrestling, that's considered relatively old. So Yeah. In the I keep having to remind myself in the grand scheme of life, like I'm still relatively young, you know, but
Yeah.
no, it's when these kids coming through, like I think, yeah, Leon Slater, like for example, like I think that I've been wrestling almost as long as he's been alive. So when you put things into context like that, yeah, it makes you feel old real quick.
Yeah. What's some advice that you give to the young people?
What I would say is just keep your mouth shut and your eyes and your ears open. And it really depends. Like if you're okay, look, if you're serious about making a living out of wrestling, right? Then you're just like honestly, you know, my approach to wrestling when I got involved was like it was never a question as to whether I was going to make it or not. It was a case of I was willing to suffer long enough until my dreams manifested and they became real, right? There's been plenty of times over the years where, you know, I've wanted to quit. There's been times that are hard. You know, there are going to be times in life, regardless of whatever you do, that are, you know, hard. Like one of the best pieces of advice that my dad gave me was years ago. I said to him, Dad, I'm thinking about quitting wrestling because there's, you know, just a lot of idiots and I'm fed up of dealing with, you know, stupidity. And he said to me, look, son, you're going to deal with stupidity no matter what you do in life. So you may as well suffer for something you love than deal with it for something that, you know, you don't want, basically. And I think that that's never been, you know, more true. You know, you have to find out what it is in your life that is worth suffering for, you know. And for me, I'm super grateful. I'm super blessed that I've had the career that I've had, but that's obviously come at a price. Like there's definitely been times where I've been super low, where I've been real miserable, where, you know, I've wanted to just bury my head in the ground and I've just, you know, wanted to cease to exist, but that kind of comes with it. And you just have to remind yourself how lucky you actually are to be able to do the things that, you know, to do something such as pro wrestling, you know, like it has been a dream, you know. I've to wrestle some of, you know, my heroes. I remember in 2007 I used to watch Kenta matches all the time, and just I used to say to myself, one day I'm going to wrestle Kenta, right? It took 17 years, but it finally happened, and I wrestled him last year for Defy, you know. So it's funny how some of these little things, like Rob Van Dam, he was one who I wanted to wrestle since when I was a kid. You know, he was one of my favorites. I thought he was amazing, and I was like, I want to wrestle Rob Van Dam one day. Sure enough, 17 years later or so, it finally happens, you know. And I think that it's just one of those things where if you persist at something long enough, like it will happen for you, but you have to continue with faith. You have to continue with belief that this is going to pay off, and that you have to continue just working on yourself, progressing. It's all these little habits that you add in daily, right? If you can just be better than the person you were yesterday, over time, that adds up, right? And yeah, there's going to be points that suck, and yeah, there's going to be points that where you're miserable. Who the fuck cares? You can end up being miserable and life can suck regardless of what you do. So like my dad said, suffer for something you love.
Yeah. And you know what? That was like you mentioned, all these little habits that you do in life, you know, it pays off in the end. Like you mentioned, the dream opponents that you've just mentioned, Kenta, and whether that's Rob Van Dam, it's truly remarkable. Like for you just to sit back now and think like where you are now and who you have fought in the business is like we mentioned, it's truly remarkable. You mentioned Defy. Defy is another picture that I've got here. What's it like working with Defy? You recently went back, I think in July, I want to say like 2-3 weeks ago, for your return after 4 years in America. Well, how was that about?
Yeah, it was awesome. You know, I've been to Seattle once before, so it was awesome to go back there. And Defy have such a loyal fan base. Like, you know, oh man, the crowd there were an absolute dream. They just wanted a good show, and they just ate up the show that we put on for them. And that, you know, what more can you ask for from that? You know, like everybody was just there to enjoy themselves and make noise. And at the end of the day, that's what, you know, we all do. We're all involved with wrestling because we love it. Like it's not because we need a job. It's because we're here because, you know, it comes from a place of passion. It comes from a place of love. And with my experience of Defy, it was just a culmination of that in the best possible way, you know. And it was great getting to go back to America. I finally went to an IHOP after 4 years of dreaming. So, yeah, I was very glad that I got my pancakes in, and yeah, back in the UK now, and glad to be eating, you know, normal sized portions again that, don't make me feel like I should hibernate for a week.
Yeah. How long was you out there for? Was it 2 weeks, a week?
No, it was literally fly in on the Thursday, fly out on the Saturday. So we were in and out real quick, and my body clock has not adjusted at all. So the past couple of weeks has been a bit all over the place, but it was 100% worth it.
I mean, what wrestlers do, to entertain us and stuff like that, us fans. It's crazy.
It's absolute madness. Like, especially when I talk to people outside of wrestling, like, some friends of mine were asking me that they were like, oh, you went to Scotland recently, didn't you? I was like, yeah. And they were like, oh, how long were you there for? I was like, well, I drove up on the Sunday, which took about 7 hours. And then I wrestled that night and then stayed over and had half a day off. So we went up, we drove up to Loch Lomond, which is the biggest loch, I believe, in the UK. Spent a few hours there, drove down, took a training seminar, and then drove back that night. And yeah, they were like, what, would you drove like to Scotland and back within like 2 days? I'm like, yeah, well, that's standard. I've driven to Scotland and back in a day before. It's it's when you have to do that for a living, you just kind of get used to it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think grand scheme of things, you hear some people moan about having to drive 20 minutes to get to work, and it's like, woo, I would trade with you. That would.
So obviously, when you just mentioned that, obviously you've driven to Scotland. This is just a question that I'm thinking in my head. When you've driven to Scotland, or whether you've ever driven to Wales, or I don't know where you are in the country, but depending if it's like a 4 or 5 hour drive, that's fuel that adds up. That's wear and tear. But then you've got your match rating, and then you've got your merch stuff. Would you say over the time that you've lost money as well, or can you lose money that you've put money in? Do you get what I mean, or do you want me to try and explain it a little bit better?
It all depends on how well you are at juggling everything, right? So like, and obviously it depends on what stage of your career you're in, like I remember when I was first trying to cut my teeth in this business, there was a show probably about 10 minutes from my house. But it was a show that had bigger shows in the country, so it was kind of like a bit of a feeder show where it was like, if I can at least perform here, this gets me noticed, this does me favors. I think and this was within my first year of the business, I think I got paid like a tenner for the show, right? And the cab fare cost £6 both ways, so you're fucking £2 down at the end of it. But it's that's kind of what you have to do when you break in. Some shows, especially in your first year or two, you're working for free, or you're working for pennies, and you're trying to get your name out there. Now obviously that changes over time, and you can become more smart with how you do things in terms of like having merchandise at shows and what have you. Sometimes you can double, triple, quadruple your wage. Like there's no uncapped earning on your merch like once you're in the door, but you kind of have to get there. And that's what one of the things is that social media has changed the game. Do you know what I mean? Like you can have a brand now that people can keep up with on whether it be X or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or whichever platform it is that you use. Whereas back in 2006 when I started, that wasn't a thing. Do you know what I mean? So it's I think that the business has definitely changed a lot in the last few years, and it's allowed us to be more full-time with it, because we've had so many different streams of income coming in, whether it be training, whether it be like seminars, whether it be helping out behind the scenes, being an agent, things like that. There's so many ways that the business is evolving and changing, and I think that all it takes is an entrepreneurial mindset to really capitalize on that and start realizing okay, this is what can be done. Like look at Lee from Progress, he has wrestling travel, that definitely wasn't a thing 20 years ago. Look at Joel Allen, who started, Suplex Wrestling Apparel. He created his own wrestling brand that, did very, very well, So, I think that it's there if you want to make it happen, but it's one of those things that you have to get used to managing risk, because there's always risk regardless of what you do. So figure out how it is that you can manage the risk of the choices it is that you're willing to take, and just commit to the process and make everything the best that it can be.
I appreciate that. Do you know that? Like, you, obviously, because you didn't have to mention any bit of that, you know, like giving advice and stuff like that, but you have.
Mm.
And before we mentioned about the Defy, you was on about like you wanted to quit wrestling and other bits and bobs that you had, you know, as a kid. But I think your rock has been your partner, Vicky. Big shout out to Vicky, who's been, I think you two have been together, I want to say 16, 17 plus years. And that's
so yesterday was our 13-year anniversary, and it was the anniversary of our 11 years married. So and here's another piece of advice for any gents out there that are as forgetful as I am: is convince your missus to get married on the date of your anniversary anyway, because then you don't have to remember an extra date throughout the year. So but
she's not watching this.
She knows exactly why that was. But also as well, like, when you think about it, you're like, what date do we want to get married? It's like, well, is there any other date that is as important as that one? Well, no, then let's just make that like our thing, So I mean, it is weird because like mentally I'd already made the commitment to her, and then just kind of like actually getting married on our anniversary was just kind of like the actual essentially the signing of a contract, basically, of making it more legit. But no, we've been together 13 years. My longest relationship before her was about 6 weeks. So I've stepped up my game. I'm doing something better with this one. But it's been a hell of a ride. It's been awesome, and it's weird as well because like so many like little things kind of like fit together with us in terms of just so many mutual interests of ours. We love the same music. We love, we both love wrestling. We both love, the same TV shows and what have you. And it just kind of felt like two jigsaw pieces, clicking together and being right for each other.
What would you say? That's amazing, and congratulations on your anniversary yesterday. And big shout out to Vicky for being your support for all these years. And what would you say?
Go on.
Sorry. What would you say the secret is to a happy marriage?
Oh, I don't know. Marry your best mate. Do you know what I mean? Like marry, the one thing that I never really even thought of was that I would marry like, literally my best friend, like my soulmate. Do you know what I mean? Like there's been no point during my relationship where I've ever thought like, oh, I've had enough of you. I'm going to go and, talk to my friends, or I'm going to go do this or whatever. And I think that a lot of the time people get into relationships because it's kind of seen as the thing to do rather than like getting into a relationship because it's the thing they want to do. Do you know what I mean? And the funny thing is that when Vic and I first got together, neither one of us wanted a relationship. So we knew that there was something strong and powerful there because neither one of us really, wanted what it was that ended up happening. Do you know what I mean? So we hung out and we just couldn't stop thinking about each other, and we couldn't stop, wanting to hang out and enjoyed each other's company. And that was it. It was like, it was almost as soon as I stopped looking for a relationship, that's when the best relationship that I've ever had, formed for me, so it's kind of one of these weird lessons where it's like if you can't force something like that, it has to happen organically. And oftentimes as well, as if you're not looking for a relationship, then what's important to you because the right person comes along and you suddenly decide that you'll change every decision that you're firm on because that what that person is to you means something. Do you know what I mean? So just get into a relationship for the right with the right person for the right reason. Don't force it, and also as well, you're going to have to compromise at some points in your relationship. You're there to support them, they're there to support you. You should always, like, in my mind, like, being in a relationship with whoever should always be the person that sees me at, without any kind of like layers or masks on. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the person going to see me for who I truly authentically am all the way through, and that person obviously has to like you, they have to love you, otherwise why are you in a relationship with them? Do you know what I mean? So what I say is find a person for the right reason, and find the right person for the right reason, and don't force it. Don't just think that you have to be in a relationship because that's society's norm, or that's what somebody else has suggested for you.
Yeah, obviously you and Vicky has been your partner / manager for God knows how many years. He was recently up at the North, which is killing it, against Michael Oku with Amira. I think what's next for that, in my opinion, is a tag team match.
Well, it's been rumored. Well, it's not completely out of the question. It was good to be able to get in there with Amira and Oku, because we haven't had like a lot of other wrestler manager dynamics, like especially in this country. There's not that many wrestlers that have managers, so it was cool that we finally got sort of another duo that were very similar to us. And I remember years ago I took a training seminar in London, and Oku was at the training seminar, and he had a real spark about him then. He had this real charisma and this talent, and straight away it was like, okay, he's one to watch out for. And over the years he's just continued to develop and blossom. And I remember we met Amira when she first moved to the UK, and I think that she, within her first week or so of being here, so to see her make that sort of jump, that commitment of saying, I'm going to move to a different country and give it my best shot, and seeing it pay off for her, that was it's very refreshing to see. It's nice to see it happening for other people. That that leap of faith is scary, but it's a lot of the time it's often what's needed in order to get the results, the dream results that you desire.
Yeah, and obviously the North. What's it like? Because they're killing it right now with some talent that they had on that show.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. And, I've seen North go from being this, small promotion. I remember the first show that I ever did for them, it was just kind of one of these things where it's like, it's cool. And, it was cool to get to do Newcastle, but you don't know whether you'll ever see that promotion again, because a lot of them have one-off shows and then kind of disappear. But no, Andy Bowers, seems to know what it is that he's doing, and he's continued to build and develop it. And I've seen it go from strength to strength. And now, the show that we were just at, little things in terms of in the back, how, there's catering for the guys, there's water and energy drinks, like it's not just about the on-screen products, it's about what goes on behind the scenes as well. He's very much stuff together, and he's putting together a real entity with North Wrestling.
And obviously you mentioned about the water and energy drinks. There was something last year, I think, Matt Cardona last year, that put, if you can't have water for your guys and girls in the back, then what are you doing? Because that's essential. You come to bust your ass for the people and the promoter, but the decent thing they can do is at least give you water or something.
Yeah, you'd think, right? But I think a lot of the time that at least depending on who it is that you work for, a lot of promoters tend to try and save as much money from shows as they can, and therefore they don't invest in certain things that are appreciated. But it's surprising that how little something like that can go like a long way. Like if the guys in the back, if they feel like they're being taken care of, if they feel like they've got somebody looking out for their best interests, running the promotion, then they'll literally go out there and kick things into the next level, and literally give their own health and bodies to make the best possible product that they can. And I think that that's important, and it's really appreciated as well. I always make an effort to try and thank promoters for, you know, all those little things, because like, starting off in this business, they definitely weren't around. And, you know, it's nice to see the you know, the business has evolved and progressed from then.
Honestly, man, do you know, like you mentioned, that's something that needs to be in. Like you mentioned, I can tell from the conversation I'm having with you for the past 35 minutes, you're a very humble guy and you're a very motivational guy, and you don't take anything for granted. That's the vibe I'm getting from you.
Well, thank you, man. And yeah, you know, it's something that in the last few years I've had like a handful of wake-up calls. You know, like one of my childhood best friends died in 2016. You know, one of, you know, so many different friends in this business have died. You know, I lost my dad 2 years ago, and it's one of these things where I think that like I owe it to them. Do you know what I mean? Like if they had the chance to be here for another day, there's no doubt in my mind that they would be. You know, so you have to kind of, you know, appreciate what it is that you have in your life. You know, and I think especially things like COVID that came along. You know, I never thought that we would be locked down in our houses. You know, so it of time to look at wrestling and just to appreciate the effort, the great effort that a lot of people go to make things happen. Because, you know, to be able to go out there and perform and to be able to give an audience, you know, of people that range from those being, say, you know, a family to being, you know, young individuals that are just looking for a good time, or basically what it is that it's people that want to be entertained for a few hours and that they don't want to have to think about all the worries that they've got going on in their lives. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, look, we got to take care of them, and we got to take care of everybody, and just, you know, get everything together really, and just be able to afford those moments. You know, like what we do is, like I've been saying, is out of a place of love. It's out of a place of you know, of passion and, you know, creativity. It's not just that we turn up and it's not another day at the office. Do you know what I mean? So you have to remind yourself how fortunate you are to have that, because I think that it's very easy at certain points to take what you have for granted, you know. And
100%.
Yeah, you just got to be grateful for what it is that you do have, because you can always be doing better and you can always be doing worse. So focus on what good there is in your life.
Yeah, and I couldn't have said that any better myself. And I'm sorry for your loss of your father and your best friend, mate. I really am.
That's all right, man. I mean, it is what it is. You know, I discovered that my family deals with things with the darkest humor imaginable. You know, like after my dad had passed, he died at home. He'd been battling with cancer, and we called the coroner. She came out. I think it was about 1 a.m. by the time that they got there. She walks into the room, and obviously they have to deal with, you know, people in various states of distress. And she walks in and she's like, "Oh, so is this Peter?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, it was about half an hour ago." And then she walks over and checks on him, and you know, he's dead. And she turns around and announces him, you know, unfortunately Peter has passed. And my mum, bless her, she just goes, "Oh, thank goodness. I would have felt terrible calling you out here at this hour if you told me he was still alive." You know, so it is what it is, you know, like my family definitely, we laugh at things that we probably shouldn't, but I mean, it is a coping mechanism. Do you know what I mean? It's how we deal with things. So, that's how we do it.
You mentioned obviously that you're a personal trainer, which you are ripped, man, I'd say. The beard's a different colour there.
Well, I have to admit that is an old picture. So, I don't look at 100% like that at the moment. That's for sure.
What's the keys and the secrets?
So what I would say is that, like, you got to play the long game, right? Because the problem that a lot of people make in regards to fitness is that they only see it as short term. You know, is when people go on a diet, they'll do it for, say, like, you know, maybe 12 weeks, and then they think, oh, I've, you know, dropped the weight or I look different, and then they go back to doing things the way that they were. And it's like, that's the mistake, is that you were the way you were because you were doing things the way that you were doing. You know, it's about changing all these little habits along the way. There's been studies recently that suggest that things like willpower are kind of like a muscle, in the sense of like you only have so much willpower throughout the day. So one thing that I definitely try and do is like find foods that I enjoy eating, because then willpower isn't even a factor. It just becomes, oh, this is what I enjoy doing. Do you know what I mean? So find yourself, start with a breakfast, find yourself and figure out what it is that your goal is, okay, and what your time frame is. Okay, so say for example, say you have like you want to lose 10 pounds in 12 weeks. Cool. You're going to approach that very differently to if you're going to be trying to lose say like 10 pounds in 4 to 6 weeks. So start with, okay, what's your destination, what's the duration to get there, and then figure it out backwards from there. If in terms of nutrition and what have you, just find foods that you enjoy eating, that are catering towards your goals, and just start to put together a diet for yourself that way. Like you said, my DMs are open. If you need help and advice, reach out and get in touch. I'll be more than happy to help you. In regards to training, it's consistency. Consistency is one of the most important things, and I think that it doesn't really matter too much in regards to how you train, because everybody's body is individual and different, and what you find works for you may be what the next person doesn't find work for them. And I think that a lot of the time you have to find something that's an actual motivating factor. Do you know what I mean? Like for example, I like the feeling of being strong. Like I like the things that would motivate me as being big and strong. So I'm going to do things in the gym that are lifting heavier weights, maybe for fewer repetitions. But also on the flip side of that, I might be doing say a few sets of more intermediate weights, but for higher repetitions to really pump that muscle up and get the blood flow going to it, right? So that's what works for me. But then for the next person, if they're not inspired by those things, then it's going to be, well, don't do those things, and figure something else out. Like find something, just find a routine that you enjoy doing, but continue to progress at it. The most important factor in terms of progressing and evolving a muscle is basically it was basically lifting heavier or lifting more reps than you were doing the week before. So typically for myself, like a standard way that I will progressive overload is the phrase I was looking for. So basically is I'll have say a rep range of say like 6 to 8 reps, right? So I'll choose an exercise. I'll go 6 to 8 reps, right? If on the first week I get 6 reps with as close to perfect form as possible, deep stretch at the bottom of the motion, slow control, lowering of the weight, and then like a slightly faster contraction of the muscle, then if I get 6 reps on the first week, cool. Then the next week I'll look to try and get more than that. Okay, so once I get to 8 reps, whether that be in a week's time or a handful of weeks time, cool. Once I've got to my top range of 3 sets of 8 reps, that's when I bump the weight up. So over time, this is where you have that progression of strength. Do you see what I'm saying? And I refer to it as running out of rope, right? Like if you have a weight that that you're going to be lifting and you get say like 3 sets of 6, cool. The next week you're looking for maybe 3 sets of 7 or even 3 sets of 8. If you get 3 sets of 8, cool, jump the weight up. And it's kind of giving you almost like backing your space into a corner where you have to lift the weights that you a lot of the time don't anticipate that you'd be capable of lifting. I've changed my training a lot since in the last few years, and I've amazed myself with what it is that I have been capable of lifting, just because I've continued to progress and just not giving myself the option to not do it, basically. Into the gym, whether it's even if it's just 3 mornings a week to begin with, cool, start there. The gym's my happy place, so it's harder for me to have a day off than it is to actually force myself to go in. I'm in 5 days at least, but then I've got shows at the weekend. When my schedule is slightly less, I'm in 6 days a week, and then I'm still active on my day off. So it's just being consistent with it, and living a healthier lifestyle, but making the right choices for those lifestyle along the way.
I see what you mean by that, and obviously, I think after this, I will drop you a DM and we'll speak more about that.
Yeah, sure. Please do.
Because then help me along. Because I'm one of them. I do give up easy, but if I see improvements, I've tried everything, but
Well,
if I see
like
improvements,
you have to. It sounds weird, right? But like you just have to find any reason to motivate you to keep going, right? So there's been a good handful of occasions in my life where I think that, I felt like I've let people down. So like I try and focus on that motivation of being like, okay, well, how can I ensure that I don't do that again? How can I ensure that I'm the best physical version of myself? How can I, get the most out of what it is I'm actually capable of? And the thing is as well, is like I'm the first person in probably my entire bloodline of, family that has ever had the opportunity to use the gym and work out. So, my dad, my granddad, they definitely didn't find out what they were physically capable of. And it's like, well, if I'm sharing the same genetics as them, I'm, kind of a bit of a test subject, which excites me of being like, okay, well, what can I, develop in terms of a physique? Do you know what I'm saying? So, it's just, but it's like I said, it's finding something that motivates you, like, Vic loves being in a calorie deficit and, lifting slightly lighter weights, but, maybe more sets, more repetitions. Whereas, I love being, in a slight calorie surplus. So I'm eating more, but I'm also lifting more and, lifting heavier. And it's finding those little motivating factors, like I was, I'm not a tall person. I'm 5'8", I'm 180 pounds. Like I was, yeah, right. So you feel my pain, right? So it's, like, and like I said as well, like I think I've, got something like ADHD because I find it very hard to focus on things. But then when I focus on something and I'm interested, I'm locked in, right? So at the gym when I'm, jacked up to my eyeballs on pre-workout and energy drinks, I'm bouncing off the walls. I'm walking around between sets, and then like I'll grab my weights and I'm like, all right, I'm in, here we go, cool. And like it's this weird feeling that I love. It's like physically breaking yourself to become stronger, right? Like it's getting in there and finding out, okay, what am I physically capable of, and thinking back to, like I said, to all my friends who aren't here, and just thinking like, okay, well, they're watching, right? Okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna put on a show for them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's like I said, like it can be the weirdest of motivational mindsets, but at the end of the day, like the thing that is most important is the habit of actually being there, right? And the motivation behind it can vary, and the motivation can be different. Like I remember some people told me I'd never be able to do something, so I always used it as motivation to prove them wrong, but some people don't respond well to that. Some people respond more better to being encouraged, being like, yeah, you can do this, come on, let's smash it. Do you know what I mean? So it really varies, like I definitely notice it in my kids, right? So my daughter, she's the most health conscious child that I've definitely ever met, like and not that that's been particularly encouraged, but it's something that she's been very mindful of. She'll always ask, daddy, is this healthy? Can I eat this? Oh, she's a vegetarian. And that's her own choice, but if you want to get her to do something, then you have to kind of be like, no, come on, you're strong, let's go. Whereas if you want to get my son to do something, you have to get my daughter to do it first, and then you have to tell him, well, she did it and she did this much, and then then that's when he gets competitive, so he steps up to the challenge and has to give it a, like, because he has to beat his sister, right? Whereas like she's the one that sets the standard, and he's the one that then has to come in and can't take loose into his little sister, so he has to come in and try and beat the record. So once again, like I said, it's the habit is the most important thing. The motivation behind it varies, but just find a reason to believe in yourself, right? Like if you can write a list of 5 things of or more as to why you shouldn't believe in yourself, well, hey, switch the question. Why should you believe in yourself? And find those reasons. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't have to, believe me, you do not have to look that hard to find just a reason to, believe in yourself and, be able, realize that you are actually capable of some great things.
Awesome, man. And like I said, I'll definitely be messaging off of this. And I think everything with what you said, like put it down into perspective, like on pen and paper, and then if you see it in front of you, I think you'll realize.
Yeah. If you write down all your bullshit excuses and read them back to yourself, you realize how bullshitty they actually are, right? Like that's
Literally.
it. You know,
Literally.
if somebody else came to you and said these exact things, you would suddenly realize, like, oh no, like that's what I sound like. Damn, okay. You know, so just if you look, there's as much of a chance of something happening for you as there is that it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? And like maybe I'm just the wrong person to speak to because, like you said, I'm a guy who's wrestled the past 18 years of his life. You know, I was a kid who was told, oh, you'll never be a wrestler. You know, this is never going to happen for you. You know, and I've gone on to wrestle my heroes. I've wrestled at Madison Square Garden. I've wrestled in America, Canada, Japan, literally all around the entire world. You know, so of course, coming from me, like, you know, yeah, I believe that you're capable of great things because guess what? I've walked that path and I've fucking done it. Do you know what I mean? So there are plenty of others out there that are capable of great things, but just hold themselves back. Like, you know, find that switch in your head to start believing in yourself, and you know, just have these daily affirmations, you know, before you do something, you know, whether you're working out in the gym or whether, you know, sometimes it's just hard to get to the gym, but once you're there, make the most of it while you're there. Do you know what I mean? Like go out and fucking tear some shit up and you'll be fucking surprised if you stick at it. If you're committed and you have the consistency, you'll be fucking amazed at how far you can actually go.
Who is your Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling?
Say that again, sorry.
Who is your Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling?
So I like guys like Kurt Angle, I would say is definitely one, because he's somebody who is equally entertaining as he is a legitimate badass, and he could switch between the two like at the, you know, in a second. Just somebody who could do it all. Do you know what I mean? Like he was, you know, had great matches, was super entertaining, was somebody that everybody could appreciate, regardless of whether they were a casual fan or you know, a diehard wrestling fan. Guys like Eddie Guerrero, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, I think that they also, you know, are very much the same in that regard. Like they you know, hit the same criteria. You know, I think that somebody like a Rollerball Rocco, you know, is one of my faves. You know, he's somebody who I don't think gets the credit he deserves for, you know, being the caliber of talent that he was, especially at the time that he was there, you know. So, yeah, I would say that those are definitely some of the guys I would consider as your Mount Rushmore. Yeah, and also, I mean, obviously, your Stone Colds, your Rocks, you know, they're up there, like, because they're both kind of those guys that at no point where they were on screen did you, or at least I never looked at The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin and didn't 100% believe that was who they were, right? Just this authenticity about them and this believability, this like larger than life, you know, sort of aura really that I think that transcended through the camera. And yeah, there's, you know, no surprise that they've been the caliber of stars that they are.
See where you're coming from with that. It's like for my generation, it'd be John Cena and like Roman Reigns, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that Roman is a great shout. You know, I think that he's definitely somebody that within the next few years we're going to look back at and say, damn, he really was all that. You know, like he's one of these guys who he seems so like polished now, like so, you know, just very kind of like chilled and relaxed yet authoritative with his stance. Do you know what I mean? Like I think that early on, you know, he didn't necessarily have that, but he's now, you know, just progressed to this point where he's just, yeah, he has such this believability, and you know, you can see he takes his time with everything. Do you know what I mean? Like, and everything's very sort of you know, smooth in that sense. It's kind of like the best way to put it. You know, is whether it's on the mic or whether it's in the ring, you know, things are very deliberate, you know, and I think that he's, yeah, definitely one of these guys that, you know, within the next few years, we're going to see up there as being one of the best of all time.
Completely agree with everything you just said. I think in the last 4 years that he was the Universal Champion and stuff like that, I think just his promos, I think him being with Paul Heyman helped him, give him that little bit of boost, confidence. He's now polished. He's great. I mean, if you think of that promo that I did with John Cena, like where he messed up his lines, and then now look at him. You know, he's good on the mic. So he's completely done like a 180 turn and become one of the best today, and it's just a matter of when he returns. I mean, it proves it because when Raw after WrestleMania, Cody was the big pop, but everyone's chanting, "We want Roman." So there it is. So when he returns, it's going to be like, wow, babyface Roman.
And don't you just hate wrestling fans sometimes that, like, for years, like, Roman was pushed as a babyface, they hated him, and now he's like a heel, they love him. Like, it's like, what do you want? Do you know what I mean? Like, but I would say that I would say that, like, Roman has definitely improved like so much in the last few years. And yeah, I think that he's definitely one of these guys that I think now, like, you can't help but respect, right? Like, especially after the run that he had with the Universal Championship. Yeah, I think that, like, it got to a point where people just couldn't help but applaud and respect him for the talent that he is.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you've given so many in this video, but I always ask everyone for an inspirational message. What would yours be? One final one.
Okay, so you get one shot at life, right? Like, why spend it being miserable, right? Like, you are the creator of your own life. It doesn't matter how bad of a situation you're in, you have the strength to change it, right? Like, there's been people who have been through far worse, and there are obviously those who are probably doing far better. But at the end of the day, what is it that you want to do? Like, don't commit to societal norms or a view just because somebody else believes that that's the right path for you. Choose your path. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, that's it. And definitely, regardless of what you do, you're going to have ups and downs. So, find the ups and the downs that are worth suffering for. It's not always going to be easy, but is it going to be worth it? Well, yeah, you decide. If it's something that if you have a desire, a goal that you want to achieve, that you want to pursue, then pursue it. Know that it's not always going to be easy. Know that, sometimes you are probably going to be tearing your hair out. That's life. It's, there's no day without night. There's no light without dark. Everything is in cycles. Like, it's a case that you kind of end up going through both, right? Like, it's winter and then it's summer, so there's all these different phases and different stages, and all you can do is just be the best version of yourself. Find out who you are. Like, if you're still one of those people that when everything has gone terribly wrong, when shit's hit the fan and everything's gone south, and you're still that kind of person that shows up and puts in the work, like, man, like, you're going to be so dangerous in terms of what it is that you're capable of, right? Because like I said, there's always going to be ups, there's always going to be downs. So go through them for the thing that it is that you appreciate the most, that you love the most, and that find the life, the path of what it is that's worth suffering for.
And I mean, pretty much the whole hour that we've been speaking, man, you've been a motivational guy. So I think any part of this video that people go to the topics that we've been speaking about, you spoke about the topics, but then you've also gone into like a motivational speaker. I think you've got that about you. So that could be, a career after wrestling. No, seriously.
Maybe. I think I know that it is definitely one of those things where it is a blessing and a curse, especially when you try to encourage your kids, like, to tidy their room or something, and then you go into a full-on like motivational speech. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I appreciate you saying so, and I'm if I can help anybody out there, if anybody can take something away from my opinion and pursue something of their own and do better for themselves, then fucking fantastic. It's all worth it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's my perspective. And realistically, like, this doesn't even sound like the level of voice that goes on in my head. Do you know what I mean? That's a crazed madman. It's like hell bent on doing the best he can. So I appreciate you saying so. And I honestly, just from one person to another, just pursue what it is that you love and do the best that you can with it.
Yeah, honestly, man, thank you for coming on today. I really do appreciate your time. I mean, like I said to you, I wanted to have had you on for ages. Big shout out to the magician of wrestling who also has tried to get you on for a while. Good for you. Your DMs are now open, so hit him up, and then who knows, in the next couple of weeks, months, years you might be on.
Yeah.
But anyway, seriously, Mark, thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. You're welcome.
Always. Thank you, mate. Take care.